What's up, everybody? My name's Scott Newhouse. Thanks for joining me. Shout out to you and the dozens and dozens of other people watching on YouTube, listening on the podcast. Today, I want to talk about 10 different things I learned about long-term care from my grandparents. So as we age, we're all going to, have slightly or drastically different experiences with their health and with their health care. That was the case with my grandparents. Each one of them taught me a lot of different things about the cost, the choices, and the trade-offs that you're going to face, the things that you might want to be thinking about. So I've got 3 grandparents that I'm going to go through, 10 different lessons, just a little sentence or two about each one, and that's pretty much it, with some action items at the end. So we're going to start with George. George was my dad's father. So the first thing that we learned from him is that you might be too proud to move in with your relatives. And so I found this out later after the fact. I was a little too young when it was happening, but my dad had offered his dad, George, to move on in with us when he was not able to kind of take care of himself fully in his own house. And George did not want to do that. He did not want to impose. So when it was time for him to kind of give up some autonomy, he did not want to move in with us. He moved into a community assisted living facility. The second thing that I learned, because I visited quite a bunch, is a community assisted living facility can be a pretty sweet deal. And so the way it worked for George is he had his own room with the living room and a bedroom, plenty of space, a small kitchenette. It was very nice. There were community activities that he could do all throughout the week, pretty much something every single day. Meals were taken care of. They would do outings for the community where they'd go different places, obviously not every day, but frequently. And then he was able to make friends with other residents. So all things considered, it was a pretty nice setup, and it was not something from a horror movie that you would see. It was not some nightmare. But the third thing that I learned from him is that it was not cheap. I don't remember the exact pricing for this, but it was in Los Angeles, Culver City. So I would imagine today's prices, it would be at least $10,000 a month to pay for something like that. The next grandparent we'll go to is Pat. This is my mom's mom. And so the fourth thing that I learned from my grandparents is that there's a lot of talk about dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, etc. These are all mental diseases, but your body could give out before your mind gives out. And so that was the case with Pat. She was mentally healthy throughout the entire duration of her life, which is fantastic. But her body gave out, which physically meant she was confined to a wheelchair in her last years. And so the fifth thing that I learned is that you really could be physically impaired for many, many years. The average need for long-term care in the U.S. is around 3.7 years for women and around 2.2 years for men. And so, men obviously die a little bit younger than women, so that has a big part in why those years of long-term care are less for men than they are for women. But Pat needed pretty extensive help for 6 years, physical help. And that extended duration is really costly. Same thing, obviously, if you've got mental issues as well, it's going to be really costly. So is that the norm for it to be 6 years? No, but it could happen. It's one of those outlier situations, but one of us could be that outlier. The sixth thing that I learned is that a reverse mortgage is not a dirty word. So for people who have lots of equity in their home, I'm thinking about people in California, Jersey, New York, high cost of living places, and people who don't want to deplete their investments or who don't have a ton in investments, or people who just don't have a lot of legacy goals, i.e. they don't want to give a lot of money or they don't feel the need to give a lot of money away at their death to kids, charity, whatever. This is really something to look into. There is a cost, and that's very legitimate. There are restrictions also with reverse mortgages, but they can be a lifeline for people who are really insistent on staying in their home, but they just don't, for whatever reason, have a lot of money outside that they're willing to part with. So you could use your home equity, and that's what a reverse mortgage could be able to help you do. So it's something to look into if you feel like it might be a good fit. The seventh thing that I learned is that long-term care insurance, which frankly at their current prices, it's a gamble. Do you fork over a lot of money in the form of a giant lump sum or thousands of dollars in annual premiums for an insurance policy that you may never need? I'm not sure. Or do you assume the risk yourself and be prepared to pay for it out of your cash reserves, out of your investment accounts, or your real estate, home equity? I would definitely encourage, and I have encouraged, pretty much everyone that I talk to at least get those long-term care insurance quotes, late 50s, early 60s, and just see what they are and understand the different options that you have. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for someone to look at that, do the analysis, and say, hey, you know what? I think it's best for me to self-insure. So something just for you to consider, and then make an informed decision from there. The next grandparent we'll go to is Don. This is my mom's father. The eighth thing that I learned from my grandparents is that you could live longer than you think. So Don actually made it to 101.5 years. So he was 6 months away from being 102, which is absolutely mind-boggling. George, again, my dad's dad, made it to 91. And then Pat, my mom's mom, made it to 91 as well. So if you're 50 now, 55, 60, and you're healthy, and we continue to have some, good solid medical advances, it could be a much, much more common scenario where people make 90 on average, and then, maybe some of us are going to make it to 100, just like Don did, and he was born in 1922. So I think we've got to really plan for at least you or your spouse to make it to 90, and then maybe someone might even make it to 100. You got to be prepared for that long life, financially, emotionally, and then also just with all the different things that you want to do in life. Think about, I'm retiring at age 60. I might have 40 years left with no work involved. So what does that look like for the rest of my life? The ninth thing that I learned from my grandparents is that you could be able to live at home for the entirety of your life. Most long-term care talk is about nursing homes and assisted living facilities, like I mentioned with George earlier, but you could have some good genes, you could have some good luck, you might be able to live at home with some assistance from family, care workers coming to your house and just giving you the things that you need at different hours of the day. Maybe they're not there nonstop, but they come by, maybe twice a day on a set, schedule, and they help you out with the things that you may not be able to do for yourself. So you might be able to live at home the entirety of your life, which I know a lot of people would really appreciate. And then the 10th thing that I learned is that if your kids are not close by, you've really got to expect to pay a lot out of pocket or via your insurance program for healthcare workers and just general maintenance of the house. And so things like, Amazon deliveries, grocery deliveries, those are going to be really essential if you don't have anyone kind of close by that you can rely on. Now, I got to tell you, my mom and my aunt, they did all of this stuff for their parents, Pat and Dawn, for multiple years. And so that's kind of, if you've got family, they might be able to fill that role, but you've also got to understand that your family might not have the time or the inclination to do that. So if your kids don't live in the same area as you, you've got to go, figure out what other resources are there to help you get the stuff that you need that you might not be able to do. And then if your family is close by, you got to have that conversation with them and see, hey, would you be able to help me out on a fairly regular basis for maybe multiple years? And maybe they can, maybe they can. So action items, and then we're just going to wrap up. So from all three of them, I think we learned that it's going to be expensive unless you die quickly. So I'd really start the conversation now, to think about where you're going to come up with this money for these programs, insurance policies, or out-of-pocket cost. Let's go on to George, though. What we learned from him is you've got to have honest conversations with your adult children about living arrangements before you need care. Would you want to move in with them? Would they want to have you move in? Don't assume on either end. I really want you just to think it through, have those conversations if necessary, and then make the best decision for you and your family, and especially your spouse. What we learned from Pat is that if you have significant home equity or limited assets, investments that you don't want to touch, I really think you should at least research reverse mortgages now while you're healthy and not when you're in crisis mode, just so you can get acclimated to the policies and kind of how they would work and how it's structured. Also, I would add strength training if really for anyone, especially people over 50. I would add strength training to your weekly routine. We all lose muscle every year after age 30, and it really accelerates after age 50. So if you can, weight train 2 to 3 times a week to keep on as much muscle as possible, I think you're really going to benefit from that the older you get. And then what we learned from Don is that if you want to age in place, but your children live far away, you got to figure out those support networks and resources and agencies where you can get help if your children live close by, can you finagle them to helping you out? And if not, then we've got to go back to those agencies and other places that can help you out. So I hope this is really helpful. Watching my three grandparents kind of go through these long-term care issues, it's taught me that there's no single right way to do long-term care or handle it. In the health journeys that we all go through, it's going to be so different for all of us. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to wait until there's a crisis to make up a decision about how we handle long-term care. So I would have those conversations now, 50s and 60s, and at least start thinking about the different things that you might encounter in the future. Hope this is helpful. I'll see you next time. Bye.